Welcome to Valor Conversations. I'm your host, Jay Trainer. Valor Conversations is powered by CSB Ministries and is the official podcast of Christian Service Brigade. For more information, please visit csbministries.org. And now, on with the show. Hello, friends. We continue in our series for Valor Conversations called Brigade Tune-Up, gearing our units up for the new ministry year coming this fall. There are, of course, many resources and things available that many leaders are not aware of. While we want to share these resources with you, we don't want this to be a step-by-step how-to guide. We want others to share their own experiences using the resources ultimately available to them. Joining in the conversation today is longtime brigade affiliate and current national events director, coordinator, calendar guru, Josh Tallman, and we'll get into that a little bit more as we develop this conversation and move forward. We're going to look at some of the upcoming events this fall in particular and discuss how some of these can help your unit, your local unit, not only locally or regionally, but also throughout the United States and also available for our friends up north in Canada too. Josh, it's great to have you on the podcast today. I know we've had the chance to connect on more than one occasion, and you've been involved in Brigade on several fronts. And before getting into the topic today, let's talk about your backstory, your Brigade backstory. How have you been involved with Brigade, and what's your role now? Let's talk about that.
Thanks, Jay. Really have to be here with you. Always fun conversation. You're right. I have been involved with Brigade for a long time, and I'll try to give a high-level overview here just because I think most people would find some of the details more boring than I do. But yeah, I started with Brigade as a tree climber with my dad when I was, I don't know, we'll say 6 years old, something like that. And I've been a stockader and a brigadier battalion guy. I've been a leader in stockade. I've been a ranger, and I've been a lieutenant in a battalion. And right now I've got my own battalion at my current church. And so I guess I'm somewhere between captain and lieutenant here. I've been involved with camps ever since I was, I don't know, like a third or fourth grader attending camp. And
wow,
I did the being a junior counselor thing as an older teenager. And I think the summer after I turned 18, I was a senior counselor for a little while, and I've led trips. At Sequoia Brigade Camp, a lot of our camps are trip camps, and so I've led backpacking trips and whitewater canoeing camps, and we kind of did some whitewater rafting this summer. It was a fun little change. I'm on the camp board, but there was a 7-year kind of gap where my job took me overseas. And it was a really fun opportunity, but when you're overseas, it's hard to be involved with your local unit. So I would fly back during the summer for a week of camp, but I really couldn't be involved on a weekly basis. So during those 7 years away, I really felt God's leading in my life to be more involved, and so I actually ended up coming back from England and moving back and taking on the role of regional director, and that was for the Southwest region, which is mostly Southern California, but Colorado and New Mexico, Arizona, that whole Southwest part of the United States, and that was full time for a while, and through a series of changes, I now have somewhat of a new role. It's more part time, and it's coordinating events at the national level, and so I don't think we know exactly what the title is. But whatever it is, it should not make me look like I'm some sort of gate or checkpoint that people need to go through in order to run their events or plan their events. It's that I am here as a resource and a help. And so maybe there's some neat things we do on the West Coast that could help the East Coast, and maybe there's some neat things I learn about what's happening on the East Coast or in the Midwest or up in Canada that might make a lot of fun, a lot of good growth opportunities for the West Coast where I'm located now. So you said calendar. I think it'd be great to have a calendar so we could all see what's happening nationwide. But it's events, it's coordinating, it's helping at the national level.
It's communicating, right? That's really kind of what it comes down to. You're not the stopgap filter of saying no. You are just multiplying the yes of what events are taking place. Is that fair?
That's the goal. That's the goal, Jay. That's a good way of describing it.
That's awesome. So I know a lot of people experience difficult and even negative times during the initial onset of the pandemic, and there have been some positive things that have also come from it, that we need to stop and sometimes count our blessings with regard to what has emerged. Some ministries have had the chance to reset. Some have had the chance to evaluate and check what is effective and what's not effective. For Brigade, we've had the chance to offer different events because of the pandemic, and resources with regard to the national level and even the international level if we're including our friends up north. So let's talk about some of the resources that you've seen emerge from Brigade. Maybe it's your own local unit, or regionally, since the early onset of the pandemic in 2020.
When you mention that new resources, the pandemic, the first thing that comes to mind, we started up something during that time called Brigade at Home. I don't know if you probably remember it, because I think some of your podcasts are available there.
I do recall that. Yeah, absolutely.
But part of Brigade at Home was there's a series of story circles for Stockade and council rings for Battalion that different leaders recorded and then made available. And so that's a resource that I really like. I think, one, in an absolute pinch, you have a pre-recorded story that you could use, but I don't like doing recorded things unless it's absolutely essential. Right. But so what I see them as useful for is that I can go and I can listen to a story and I can hear the application of it, and one that I wouldn't already have known and know how to use it. So that's a resource I like. The other one is, as we were working on, we had like the siege weapons module that came out. We had Stock Car 2 that came out. These are both for Stockade. I began to realize that some of the Stockade resources actually could work real well for Battalion. And in fact, I used some with my battalion. It was
that's great
Stockade module, but I didn't show them the cover, but I took it and I planned our battalion meeting around the core of what that Stockade module introduced. And I tweaked it, of course, to make it fit for our age group. And I was noticing that there's some battalion missions that can do the same thing. I have to maybe water down is not the right word, but simplify it a little bit for the appropriate, the Stockade age. But hey, there's a resource that doesn't have there's no matching version in Stockade. And I like that resource and I want to use it. I just need to adapt it and I can use it for the other age group. So those are the two of the resources that helped me as a leader over the last couple of years here.
That's great. What are some of the other resources that you have found helpful to different brigade units that might be overlooked by many? Perhaps something from the brigade shop, maybe something that you've utilized again locally or in your time as a regional director. What are some of the local units? What have they used for their ministries within the context of their churches?
So one of the things that I really like is when the local unit makes use of men in their congregation that aren't otherwise part of the unit. So maybe that's because they were a dad originally and were part of the battalion or the Stockade, and as their boys grew older and aged out, they kind of left with the boys, or they just don't feel, a lot of guys that they feel like they don't have anything to offer when they really do, and God can use them with the skills and the gifts that he's made them with. So I'm thinking of a guy at one of our churches who's really good with woodwork, and so he brought in a lathe and he had the guys make these amazing things on the lathe, and then because that's so much a part of his life, and since he is a strong committed follower of Christ, it's easy for him to either draw parallels between the lathe work they were doing, or just to explain to guys, hey, as a carpenter, here's how I live being a Christian who's a carpenter. And so I think those experiences and sharing is helpful to the unit, but it's also helping the guy to find a place to serve and find out that he has a place in the body of Christ.
That's awesome. Yeah, we overlook sometimes the resources that are directly in front of our faces every Sunday, or maybe the back of their head that we're looking at from behind. And of course, the person I immediately think of when you are talking about this is Dave Dixon, who we had the chance to interview and have on this podcast a little bit ago, which about storytelling. Great interview, by the way. Thanks for that suggestion. Which was
Funny
really
thing
cool.
was, Dave Dixon was the one who had the lathe. I was thinking of him when I was giving my example.
There you go. So right around this time of year, August, it's kind of the calm before the storm. But in theory, leaders should be getting ready for their fall ministry kickoff as kids get ready to go back to school. We, of course, have a pretty neat event coming up on September the 8th. So let's talk about it. What has become now the Continental Kickoff. How have you seen this benefit units and relationships with different churches over the past couple of years? And why is it important for leaders to get involved now in this event? Here we are just 4 weeks out, 4 or 5 weeks out. Why is it important for them to get involved in this right now?
Yeah, this is good timing, Jay. And I think it's interesting the way you introduced the kickoff. When we did it that first year, I thought it was sort of just a one-time thing because, hey, almost everybody was doing their brigade ministry remotely. Some had kind of paused it even for a little while. And so we had to find something that would work. But it was such a success that we've been doing it every year since then. And I see it only picking up steam, which I'm excited about. I think really it's a great fun event to kind of build enthusiasm for the upcoming year. I'm a really busy guy. I got a lot of different vocations that I do between like the actual professional ones where I'm earning money, but then as a father and as a son, right, and a brother and a neighbor, and so anytime that I have to invest more time in something is hard. And the great thing about a kickoff is that as a leader, you don't really need to do much. Like it's kind of just there for you. You show up for your normal meeting, and the kickoff crew has it done for you. So I think it's a nice to give the leaders a little bit of a respite as they're getting ready to energize their guys. It builds camaraderie between the different churches. There are brigadiers, some of them at my own churches. I lived in Maryland for 7 years and had a great church out there, Chapelgate Presbyterian, where I got to be a lieutenant at. My church now is Mount Calvary Lutheran Church. I've been at Big Valley Grace. I've been at Modesto Covenant. And some of my own guys don't realize that there is other churches, even in their own state, let alone nationwide, that do stockade or do battalion or do tree climbers. And so not only do they get to meet and hear from those churches, but they get to compete against them. Usually we have, some sort of game as a competition.
Yeah.
And so, that's how like guides build relationships through these challenges and through games. And so I think that's a great opportunity with this thing. And then getting more to your point about leaders getting involved, I think that you kind of set the tone for your year at the beginning, and you this first couple meetings that you have really establish a culture for your ministry, and I think culture is so important. And so,
yeah.
But this event helps to set that the way that you want your culture to run. We start to see from the very beginning that we're not just we have this Bible that we read occasionally, and then it's not Bible time anymore, and then it's game time or some other part of lifetime. But that God's word, our relationship with God, it changes who we fundamentally are and how it invades every part of our lives and transform them. Mm-hmm. And I think you start to that. I hope it comes across that is intended to be part of this kickoff. And so leaders get involved early so that you have lots of guys who are there, and leaders get that culture off to a good start for your new ministry year.
Yeah, and it's gonna be neat to be part of the team again as we plan and prepare for that Thursday night event. And what's really cool, like you mentioned, and you have this experience. Now I'm going to deviate from our pre-planned questions here for a second. You have not only overseas experience, but you also have East Coast experience and West Coast experience. So you can speak into the nature of some of that camaraderie, the differences between such, right?
Yeah, no, there are some superficial differences, maybe differences in. Okay, so the East Coast guys that I spent time with, they're a lot more into hunting than my West Coast friends. Um, they're also more into like, okay, so Camp Hemlock, at least they used to. I don't know if they still do. They had a go-kart camp where you like race the go-karts, but you also learn how to work on them and how to do like
Oh,
maintenance and that sort of
cool.
thing. It's an
Yeah,
awesome idea. I've never even heard it proposed on the West Coast. I think it's so awesome. Um, but just because of like the nature of, okay, you're going to see some hometown bias here because I am a Californian.
fair
Um,
enough.
the, the difference between the Sierra Nevada mountains and the Central Appalachians, um, the Sierras just lend themselves to some awesome backpacking and whitewater sports that you can't do to the same level on the East Coast. And so I've been able to see these distinctives, but yet what drives, what permeates throughout the camp is the same at both, and that is a desire and a love for Jesus and a desire to follow him and spend my life to him.
That's awesome. And again, at the end of the day, this continental kickoff that we have coming up, it becomes the great equalizer. Whether you are used to West Coast culture, or whether you're used to East Coast culture, or maybe somewhere in between, or hey, for our friends up north in Canada, they have their own culture, and it's different on each side of the country as well, which is very interesting. So it's going to be a neat event. I'm looking forward to it, and I know we are planning it, and we're getting underway. And watch for our listeners, watch for the sign up. It is coming soon, but be prepared. It's going to be the night of September 8th. You don't want to miss it. So
You
go ahead, Josh.
you mentioned Canada, and it was so fun. I've had the opportunity and the pleasure of working with Howard Pike, who's now the
Oh yeah,
president of CSB Canada, and we've worked on modules together. And Howard's been doing it for a lot of years, and so as I was coming kind of new into the project, and he was kind of explaining to me how we make our modules work for both Canada and the U.S. It was just there are so many fun little things from we take U.S. spellings and we use U.S. spellings, for like color is spelled differently between the two, and then we use Canadian standards for like the grammar, and so things like where you place the quote, if you have like a quote, where you put the punctuation in regard to the quote.
okay, yes,
And so there's a system to it, and there's a reason we do it, so that we try and make it to where our U.S. readers will maybe just read over and not notice the Canadianisms, and our Canadian readers will read over and not notice the United States isms in it. And so it's been a lot of fun working with Howard. So yes, I have had the opportunity, and it's been a lot of fun to do Brigade all over the place.
well, and I know Howard has promoted in the past this continental kickoff, and as we come to our third installment of it this September, it's going to be neat. So again, listeners, watch for that information if you haven't already seen it. So it's coming your way September 8th. With that being said, let's talk about some of the other events that you see happening in this next ministry year that Josh, maybe you will be involved with directly and leading it. Or maybe it's just something that's newsworthy that you want to report it and share about that you can pass on to our audience, our listeners for now. And within the scope of all this, I think it's important to have purpose and intentionality behind these events. What do you see with these different events? What do you see them accomplishing?
We're back to the questions you gave me ahead of time.
Yes.
So there are a lot of events, and some of them I'm going to be able to participate in and are going to be here local to me, and others are events I know of that are happening elsewhere. So let me kind of give you just mention a few of them, but I will kind of group them based on what I see as their underlying purpose.
Okay.
So
beautiful. I like that.
Yeah. So like we have some events that they're kind of like the competitive fun, and let's build. They build unity. They build fellowship within the church, but also with other churches. So if that's what you're going for, we have what we would call Camperelle, what most others would call Camperama or Stockorama. We're going to have those going throughout the country, and I think most of them tend to be in the spring. Because we like to be able to build up our team and practice and get ready for it. And so that tends to be a spring event. Then there's others that are usually held more in the fall. And that would be more like a leadership training event. And so we have Leadership Advance, or it's sometimes called JLC, Junior Leadership Conference.
Yes.
And that's targeting the young men who are usually leaders in their battalion, and is helping them learn how to, not just how to be a better leader, but making sure that we're leading people the right way. Because you have leaders that have all the skills, but they're taking people the wrong direction. And so we don't want those to be good leaders. We want them to have poor leadership skills so they don't take people with them. So first we want to make sure you're leading the right way. And then we want to give you some leadership skills. So that would be JLC or Leadership Advance. But if you're an adult leader, whether that's stockade or whether that's even tree climbers occasionally, or battalion, we have adult leader training, men's training that's available as well. And so that is usually done with a regional director who would come and host something in church. And that's available. There are the have adventure, have fun, introduce them in adversity. Because adversity is really what the Lord uses a lot of times to build us up, to build character, to provide growth. Remove distractions. Sort of an intense time of study discipleship, and those would be like our summer camps, right?
Yes.
And we normally think of summer camp as being a summer thing, and we're just finishing that, and that's true. But a lot of camps have work days throughout the year, like come and do like a service project at the camp, help get it ready for next summer, or there'll be celestial events that a weekend at camp here or there, and so it's that unplug from normal life and let me focus that I see the camps really providing. The last one kind of group that I'll put up here is relationship building events. And so out here in California, we have something called Father-Son Team Day. It's like a Saturday where we basically try and set dads up to succeed. Like you're going to go through a series of competitions. You're going to have a lot of fun. You're probably going to get mad because, like you end up being stronger than dad and something like that. And so we want to build something where dad can use all those situations and say, hey, this is how I, as a man of God, respond. This is how we should be in this situation. We always let the dads report their scores for all events so they can demonstrate honesty and integrity to the boys. So they're not called Father-Son Team Days outside of California, to my knowledge, but there are Father-Son events, Father-Son weekends, Father-Son adventure night that do happen. And then you have like your stock car races. Yes. And those help build relationships, not just between the guys in the battalion, the guys in the stockade, but with their larger church. Because a lot of these, you have people from outside the unit who can come and they can race. And so you get the men's group maybe at your church to come and work with your unit. There's also, there's your local stock car race, but then we also have the national competition for design that we now are doing every year, where guys can submit pictures of their stock car and enter to win cool prizes, and there's different age groups and everything for that. So a lot of events, if I mention something too fast, you're not familiar with it, I would reach out to me. Tallman, JTALLMAN at csbministries.org.
That's it. Yeah. That's
Jay. Sorry, did I go?
No, you're good. This is. I think it's neat to again promote these regional or even more local type of events that may happen, like stock car you mentioning is local, but then it grows from there. There's sometimes that regional race that does take place for our stockaders and whatnot, and sometimes we have to remember that just because there's a different title doesn't change its intentionality, doesn't change its purpose. At the end of the day, we want to see our young men, we want to see our boys in the local units grow up to be godly men of character and integrity, and are continuing to pass it on. And when you think about it, when you were going through all those, man, there's a lot of stuff that's available out there, not just on the regional level, but even on the national level too, which is pretty cool.
Yeah.
So we can't forget that, and I want to encourage our listeners to look at the different regions that you might be a part of and get involved in some capacity with regard to participating in a regional event, whether it's out west, whether you're up north in Canada, or you're out east, or maybe you're somewhere in the middle, because there are always going to be different things available to you. And guess what? If there aren't, then maybe, just maybe, God might be leading you to start something, which is really cool to think about as well. Any response to that, Josh?
Well, actually, well, yeah, it'd be great to. I'd love to help somebody start one of these events. And but actually, what I was thinking of is we can help each other with these events too. So I think each of our camps has some sort of Bible study, right? And we call ours Bible X, or Bible Exploration. And each of our, we'll have like themes for Leadership Advance. And we've got this, every region or every group that's putting these on, I think, has like this stockpile of what they've used over the years.
Yeah.
And sometimes you have some idea and you really want to run with it and develop something new. I know I tend to grow more from trying to, like, putting together a curriculum is maybe the wrong word, but the theme and the study and the curriculum. And so there's times I don't have there's cases where I don't have time for that. And so being able to use one that's already gone through, been used in another region, and has been, the little things you find as you're going through it, they've been corrected and fixed, and we're excited about it. We can share those things with each other. We can help each other out. And if you're starting something new, we can share it with you so that you don't feel like you don't have to start from the, ground zero. You have some scaffolding that you're building on.
Yeah, resourcing one another is really what it comes down to. And if it was effective, it may need tweaking based upon the culture, based upon the camaraderie of where this event's taking place. But hey, why not share how this theme has worked for one group that could ultimately cross over and work in another region, or work in another area of our country. So I love what you're sharing with that, your heartbeat of, hey, let's start things. And you know what? If it's not effective, we just learned another way not to do it. And then we'll try it again the next time, right? Try a different thing. So Josh, as we begin to wind down here, one of the things I really do love this. I enjoy talking with the different guests that have been on Valor Conversations, and many different responses have come out from our guests, from the conversations that have taken place. The thing that I ask is this purpose statement, this celebration, wins and victories. What would you say is a win for you, both on a personal level and in ministry? And maybe it's one and the same, I don't know. But ultimately, what victories really bring you life and encouragement along the way?
So I'll give a different answer. One answer for personal, one for ministry, although they're certainly intertwined. And on a personal level, I have 3 daughters. I don't have any sons. So, well, part of the reason that I like being involved with CSB is it gives me time with the guys, which is important. And another reason is that I really care about the young men who are currently between ages, say, like 9 and 15 or so, because at one point, some point soon, my daughters will start looking for these young men, and I want to make sure they have a lot of very godly men that they can look at and consider as they form relationships and get married, should God have that wonderful gift for them. So for me, anytime that I can get my family involved in, whether it be a camp or a battalion event, that's a win for me, because I don't have to put my daughters aside while I go do another thing with the guys. And I don't mean so much them helping me stuff envelopes or something like that, although occasionally do help me with some of those tedious things. But scouting a new trail, fixing a leaky boat, if I am working on like a Bible exploration, hey, let's go through this together. And so when they can be involved in a strong way like that, in a deep way, that's a win for me. And a lot of it was sort of interesting. We designed these events for young men, for boys, and to see how my daughters react to them. Um, Sometimes in ways I would expect, sometimes in ways I never would have guessed. Um, but yeah, that's fine. We often do that. Like it'll just be me and one or two of my daughters, or maybe it'll be our whole family. But when I get them involved, that's a win and an encouragement. From a ministry perspective, um, whenever one of the young men I've been working with begins serving in some new capacity, especially outside of his unit. So we actually lost this guy. His name is Ben from Maryland. He stopped going to our battalion because it was for a good reason, and I encouraged him to do it. He was asked to be a leader in the church middle school group, and there was a conflict time wise with our battalion, but he was asked to be a leader because they saw in him something that they wanted to pass on to the middle school boys. And so I was like this is like a graduation. Like, yes, you're not technically 12th grade yet. You know, he was, I think, that's like a sophomore when it happened.
Oh, wow.
But, this is wonderful that you serving this way. Another guy there, and a lot of people here may know his name, Nick Liberto. He was in our battalion, and he's now the executive director of Proven Men. He's helping men to be free from sexual sin. And so to see that seeds that we planted in Stockade, or in these two guys' case, it was battalion, but see those cultivated and grown, and the fruit that comes from it, that's what's a win and encouragement for me.
That's awesome. So Josh, any final words or thoughts for our audience today? It's kind of a free-for-all for this last segment. Any advice or words of wisdom?
Let me tell maybe a little story from a recent trip that I did, and there's an application at the end. And it's also me just being able to brag on my daughters. But we got away for a week and we went backpacking. Second family backpacking trip, but first serious family backpacking trip. In fact, actually one of those recorded council rings, story circles,
yes,
explains what is technically our first family backpacking trip. But now the girls are older, you know, they're 12 and the twins are 10. And we decided to take them to Yosemite. And it was 35 miles over 4 days. Wow. And the first 2 days they had to climb 6,000 feet with their packs on. And they were ready to give up in the first 15 minutes. We got to the first sign and it was parking lot this way, you know, pointing back, and like, we're done, we can't go any further. It's so hot, my shoulders are sore. And I really thought, you know, based on how little progress we had made, that actually that was going to come true, that we weren't going to make it. But we tackled it in little steps. And like our first break, we had this beautiful like stream coming through it, and mossy rocks and butterflies, you know, fluttering around. And we were reading the Fellowship of the Ring, like the Tolkien book. So we every time we had a break, we'd pull out the book and read it out loud. And that was just a little enough to get them going to the next one. And I need to not draw this out, but we'll just say that God even used mosquitoes as motivation to continue and to progress and to go towards what, you know, our goal was. But as we got to the end, you know, and their moods had changed considerably. And they ended up we had a great time. But I asked them, you know, hey, what did you learn about this through this experience? And they said, you know what? The two of them said it. I had a hard time when we were it felt like we were doing work at times, and it was hard. But as soon as we got to the campsite and we saw what you and Mom had planned, and there's like waterfalls, there were swimming holes, it was just amazing. And they said, you know, it was all worth it, and we're really glad that you encouraged us to go through what was difficult. Because it took hard work, but that's what makes it so good. And actually, the third one says, she looks at me and she kind of whispers because she didn't want her sister to overhear. She says, actually, the hard work was fun. She liked the walking with the pack on. She liked the challenge of it and knowing that they were doing something worthwhile. So that's a fun story. But you know, I think sometimes I can feel that way with ministry. Sometimes it does feel like work. Not like it's all good stuff, but just it's like it keeps piling on at times, is what it feels like. And I just want to say that things that are worth doing, things that have great reward at the end, things that you look back and you forget all about the struggles because the victory is so joyful and so good. I just want to remind you that when it gets tough, that's what you're going towards. That's your goal, and that's where we're going to be. So stick it out. Ask God for mosquitoes when you need them to keep you going, and we'll reach that great campsite.
There you go. That's awesome. Well, Josh, thank you for being part of today's discussion about some of the resources that are available to brigade units, these national events and regional ones and even local ones. It's really, truly a unique opportunity to kick off the ministry year and actually to continue to sustain it as well. And I want to encourage our listeners for you to sign up and be involved with these different events for not only your fellow leaders, but also for the young men as well, particularly the Continental Kickoff. It's coming soon, again, September 8th. So Josh, thank you again. Truly a pleasure as always. I enjoy our talks and our conversations. Thanks for joining in today.
Thanks, Jay. I'll see you all later.
Thanks for tuning into Valor Conversations with your host, Jay Trainer. Valor Conversations is powered by CSB Ministries and is the official podcast of Christian Service Brigade. For more information, please visit csbministries.org. And in the meantime, stay tuned for more Valor Conversations coming your way soon.